Mark 15 is divided into 6 sections. Mark 15, 1 through 8. Jesus before Pilate. The council binds Jesus and hands him to Pilate, who questions him as king of the Jews while Jesus remains silent before many accusations. At the festival, Pilate customarily releases a prisoner, and the crowd approaches asking him to continue the practice. A helpful verse to hold on to here is verse 5. But Jesus still made no reply, and Pilate was amazed. Verses 9 through 16. Barabbas released and Jesus condemned. Knowing the leaders act from envy, Pilate offers Jesus the king of the Jews, but the incited crowd demands Barabbas and shouts for crucifixion. Pilate satisfies them by releasing the insurrectionist, having Jesus flogged, and handing him over to crucifixion as soldiers lead him into the palace. Keep verse 15 in mind as you review this section. Wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. Verses 17 through 24. The king mocked and crucified. Soldiers clothed Jesus in purple, crown him with thorns, strike and mock him as king, then lead him out after replacing his clothes. Simon of Cyrene is forced to carry the cross to Golgotha, where Jesus refuses drugged wine and is crucified as soldiers divide his garments by lot. Verse 20 captures an important idea in this passage. And when they had mocked him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him out to crucify him. Verses 25 through 32. The crucified king of the Jews. At 9 in the morning, Jesus is crucified beneath the written charge naming him king of the Jews, with 2 rebels beside him. Passers-by, leaders, and fellow crucified men mock his claimed temple restoration and saving power, demanding that Israel's Messiah descend so they may believe. A memorable verse from this section is verse 31. In the same way, the chief priests and the teachers of the law mocked him among themselves. He saved others, they said, but he can't save himself. Verses 33 through 40. The Son of God dies. Darkness covers the land before Jesus' cries of abandonment and psalmic words, receives sour wine, and dies with a loud cry. The temple curtain tears from top to bottom. A centurion confesses him as God's son, and faithful women who served Jesus watch from a distance. The verse to notice here is verse 39. And when the centurion who stood there in front of Jesus saw how he died, he said, "Surely this man was the Son of God." Verses 41 through 47. Jesus laid in a tomb. Women who followed and supported Jesus in Galilee remained present, while Joseph of Arimathea courageously asks Pilate for the body before Sabbath. After confirming death through the centurion, Pilate grants it, and Joseph wraps Jesus in linen, lays him in a rock-cut tomb, and seals the entrance as women observe. Verse 43 is a strong anchor for this section. Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent member of the council, who was himself waiting for the kingdom of God, went boldly to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. We're about to read through Mark chapter 15 from the beginning. Very early in the morning, the chief priests, with the elders, the teachers of the law, and the whole Sanhedrin, made their plans. So they bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. "Are you the king of the Jews?" asked Pilate. "You have said so," Jesus replied. The chief priests accused him of many things. So again, Pilate asked him, "Aren't you going to answer? See how many things they are accusing you of." But Jesus still made no reply, and Pilate was amazed. Now, it was the custom at the festival to release a prisoner whom the people requested. A man called Barabbas was in prison with the insurrectionists who had committed murder in the uprising. The crowd came up and asked Pilate to do for them what he usually did. "Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews?" asked Pilate, knowing it was out of self-interest that the chief priests had handed Jesus over to him. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have Pilate release Barabbas instead. "What shall I do, then, with the one you call the king of the Jews?" Pilate asked them. "Crucify him," they shouted. "Why? What crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." Wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. The soldiers led Jesus away into the palace, that is, the praetorium, and called together the whole company of soldiers. They put a purple robe on him, then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on him. And they began to call out to him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" Again and again they struck him on the head with a staff and spit on him. Falling on their knees, they paid homage to him. And when they had mocked him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him out to crucify him. A certain man from Cyrene, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus, was passing by on his way in from the country, and they forced him to carry the cross. They brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. Then they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. And they crucified him. Dividing up his clothes, they cast lots to see what each would get. It was 9 a.m. when they crucified him. The written notice of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." They crucified 2 rebels with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "So, you who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, come down from the cross and save yourself." In the same way, the chief priests and the teachers of the law mocked him among themselves. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. Let this Messiah, this King of Israel, come down now from the cross, that we may see and believe." Those crucified with him also heaped insults on him. At noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. And at 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani?" which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of those standing near heard this, they said, "Listen, he's calling Elijah." Someone ran, filled a sponge with wine vinegar, put on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink. "Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to take him down," he said. With a loud cry, Jesus breathed his last. The curtain of the temple was torn in 2 from top to bottom. And when the centurion who stood there in front of Jesus saw how he died, he said, "Surely this man was the Son of God." Some women were watching from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the Younger and of Joseph, and Salome. In Galilee, these women had followed him and cared for his needs. Many other women who had come up with him to Jerusalem were also there. It was preparation day, that is, the day before the Sabbath. So, as evening approached, Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent member of the council, who was himself waiting for the kingdom of God, went boldly to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. Pilate was surprised to hear that he was already dead. Summoning the centurion, he asked him if Jesus had already died. When he learned from the centurion that it was so, he gave the body to Joseph. So Joseph bought some linen cloth, took down the body, wrapped it in the linen, and placed it in a tomb cut out of rock. Then he rolled a stone against the entrance of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of Joseph saw where he was laid.